Well, guys, it's been a long process, but the City of Sanford, the council, and the planning board have finally settled on what's going to go into the new campground ordinance. It's been a long process, but the outcome isn't all bad. It's not all good either, but I think it's going to be good for the City of Sanford. So the new ordinance is forcing us to scrap our engineered plans that cost us tens of thousands of dollars. So in this video, we're going to cover all of that, and we're going to get after it right now. If you're new to this channel, my name is Michael Patterson, and my family and I are trying to build a campground on 113 acres in Sanford, Maine, where the zone allows for a campground. And my neighbors are trying to stop the project, or have temporarily stopped it. So if you want to follow our journey of building a campground, click subscribe and tap the bell so that you'll be the first to know when we post another video. It has been a long 6-month process that I'm so grateful wasn't extended for another 6 months. I was impressed with how the Sanford Planning Board and the City Council listened to every neighbor who wanted to speak out against our campground plans. Remember, although it was our submitted campground plans that triggered the moratorium, the Council and the Planning Board made it very clear from the beginning that they wanted to update the City of Sanford's campground ordinance and not target a specific campground project like ours. In other words, they didn't want to target our campground project with rules that favored the opposition that was against our project. Since this new ordinance would also impact existing campgrounds that wanted to expand in the future, 2 other campground owners started participating in the meetings. And I am so thankful to David Houle of Apache Campground, as well as Michael Crimmins and Ryan Ainsworth of Yellowstone Campground for joining in at the city meetings. These gentlemen brought solid points to the city meetings that I'm confident had a significant influence on the city's final decision. I also really enjoyed meeting these guys and sharing campground ideas and enthusiasm. I'm still gung-ho to build a campground. Okay, back to the opposition, which was made up of 76 members in the Sand Pond Association, which formed with the primary goal of stopping our specific campground, even though our land is zoned for a campground. They are represented by an attorney who made the following suggestions for the new campground ordinance. First, campgrounds should not be allowed in the rural residential zone that the city identifies campgrounds as being allowed. And we checked with the city before buying the lands to make sure the campground was allowed. The neighbors claimed that a campground would destroy the, quote, rural nature of the residential zone, end quote. But they didn't get specific about what that means. Remember, we checked with the city on the zoning before purchasing the land, and the city told us they liked the idea of a campground, and so we purchased the land. Next, they wanted any new campgrounds to be treated as conditional rather than permitted uses, which would give the city more abilities to put specific restrictions on campground submissions. It was decided by the City Planning Board and the Council that they already have considerable influence on how new projects are developed in our city. They wanted the campsite setbacks from abutting neighbors to go from 20 feet to 200 feet. The council decided on 75 feet. And this destroyed our current plans that we have spent tens of thousands of dollars on. Now we have to re-engineer everything. Next, they requested provisions regarding quiet hours, occupancy limitations, having dogs leashed with proof of current vaccinations provided, having 24-hour staff and security, and an on-site office. They wanted to prohibit swim spas, hot tubs. They wanted to prevent bringing in watercraft or out-of-state firewood. And all of this was done to make it prohibitive for us and ultimately anyone to have a campground in Sanford. The Planning Board and the City Council recognized these motivations by the neighbors and also pointed out that there are already city and state rules governing these areas. Regarding sand pond water quality concerns, the opposition failed to provide any evidence that campers would destroy the pond. If you watch my other videos, we learned 3 things from the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, about protecting pond water quality. First, the DEP wants people to swim and use our lakes and ponds and rivers for recreation. Second, septic systems of the opposing neighbors that are dangerously close to the water's edge pose the largest single threat to our pond's ecology. Third, the clear cutting done by the opposing neighbors at the water's edge in order to give them a better view of the pond has destroyed much of the ecology and habitat that the animals used to be able to take advantage of. I think the biggest take home here was that the City of Sanford announced that it has no jurisdiction over the pond because it is controlled and managed by the state of Maine. Next, the neighbors wanted to deny RVs in the shoreland zone. They claimed that RVs are very similar to cabins and therefore should be prevented from entering the shoreland zone. This was largely ignored. However, the neighbors were successful at stopping our plans due to the 75-foot setbacks from the neighbors. This prevented us from using the 3 parcels we have down to the water for campsites. Again, it's about compromises, guys. Next up was seasonal limitations. They recommended a seasonal limitation of May 15th to October 15th. And the city adopted this limitation, but extended the season a bit more than what the neighbors wanted. This, of course, stopped our plans to allow for winter camping. Next up, they wanted a 10-acre minimum for any campground project in the city, and the city decided on 5 acres. The neighbors wanted 12-foot privacy fences, and the city decided to go with a 50-foot vegetated buffer. This 50 feet is part of what makes up the 75-foot setback. Next up, occupancy limits on campsites. This was not added to the new campground ordinance and didn't need to be. Campground management will use discretion and request that campers rent additional sites if a campsite becomes crowded. So the opposition made other requests as well, but these I feel were the most significant. I want to take a moment and let you know that if you're looking at real estate in Southern Maine, my daughter Margaret is a local real estate agent, and her contact information is in the description down below. Okay, this has been a long 6 months for my wife and I, and it has been expensive with engineering investments lost and attorney expenses. I'd like to share with you 9 things I learned from this moratorium experience. First, be ready to compromise. Don't be absolutely determined to get your way on anything. I was and still am willing to consider granting public access to Sand Pond with ample parking along Sandy Point Road. I don't really want to do this, but this is an example of a tough compromise that I'm willing to make, as it will use up some of our most valuable land and possibly upset the neighbors even more, which I really don't want to do. Neighbors who appear to be nice was another thing that I learned. Be careful how transparent you are with your campground plans. Sometimes nice neighbors are really trying to get information from you so they can use it against you. Next, I learned, go to social media. Take pictures and drone footage of everything and put it on YouTube. Our local community was largely in favor of our project. Many were shocked at the damage members of the Sand Pond Association are doing to the pond with their septic systems and illegal tree cutting, which is in one of my other videos at the water's edge. I shared pictures and videos on YouTube of how these neighbors continue to throw trash on our property, damage our fence, put out cameras. Recently, I've started putting up game cameras because we have a problem with the opposition neighbors damaging our fence, our signs, and putting more trash on our property, and now trespassing, which I've had to contact the police about. Next, don't blame the out-of-staters. Local Mainers are every bit as nasty as the out-of-state residents when it came to opposing our campground project. Okay, attorneys. An attorney won't help you as much as you think when it comes to dealing with the town. Do your own work and prepare for meetings. Your attorney will be expensive and won't do much for you. Next, you want to identify the key opposers to your campground project. Make sure you understand who the ringleaders are and the points they are trying to drive home on why your project should be stopped. Make sure you speak to these points when it is your turn to speak in front of the board and the city council members. For our project, it was Brian Dumont, who is president of the Sand Pond Association, B. Gil Met, and Paul Frisk, who is a retired Superior Court Justice, and I'm sure he was hoping that title and past experience was going to help him in this project, and I think it probably did. Next, I learned to get the facts. The neighbors share opinions like they are facts. They made claims which were essentially not true, that campers would destroy the ecology of the pond, but they had no evidence because there is none. We contacted the Department of Environmental Protection, and I shared these facts in our YouTube videos. Okay, what else did we learn? Well, be careful what you share, including what I provide in these videos, because our campground project is still not approved, and the neighbors are likely to continue opposing us all the way until we finally, hopefully, get something approved. All right, what's next? Well, my wife Bonnie and I are working on our updated submission to the City Planning Board. We've had to make a lot of changes and consider how the seasonality of the campground will impact our ability to break even or hopefully turn a profit. Going forward, I will be posting lots of details regarding what the campsites will include for amenities and, of course, videos on local activities. And as of late, I'm dealing with frequent trespassing, so there'll be some videos on that. Please continue to make comments below if you are finding these videos informative. Like and subscribe to get updates when we post new content. And hey, if you want to learn more about how the neighbors behaved in the recent meetings, watch this next video.